People who have ordered a bar's safe word drink to get out of a bad situation. What was your date like and how did the staff help? Story 1. Ordered a Manhattan. Bartender told me I had a call at the phone at the end of the bar. I go over and look around for a phone, but I can't find one. He then asks me if I need a cab and that I can wait out back for it to arrive. I had no idea what was going on, and after a few exchanges of quizzical looks, he explained that a Manhattan is the safe drink. I just wanted a Manhattan. He said I was the first person in years to have ordered one at the bar.
We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description.
Story 2. I've experienced the bartender hero before. Out with a friend in DC. Guy comes up, stands way too close, introduces himself and shakes my hand way too hard and way too long. I actually had to pull my hand away and he kept the grip. I politely told him I was visiting a friend I hadn't seen in a while and wanted to spend my time with her and turned my back. He kept standing there trying to talk to me. I again, but more firmly, told him I wasn't interested. He stayed. He orders another drink and the bartender serves him, all the way at the other end of the bar. Actually showed him his drink and said, "It will be over here," and walked it as far away from us as he could. I thought that was brilliant. He got a very good tip from us. Story 3. This isn't exactly a bar story, but a bus story with a bartender. It happened back when I was in uni. I had to rush back home for a family emergency, and the cheapest and fastest option was a Greyhound bus that departed at midnight. It was a 4.5-hour drive from point A to point B downtown. Anyway, I sat alone. The bus wasn't very full. I fell asleep about an hour into the ride and woke up to a man in the seat next to me with his arm around my waist and head on my shoulder. I was creeped out, but also afraid to make a scene in the middle of the night, where I thought only the driver was awake at this time. I asked him what he was doing and to get off me. I was in the window seat and felt trapped and frozen. He tried to make small talk with me, saying I looked cold and needed a warm, hard body. He said when we arrived, we should grab a coffee because he sensed a vibe between us. I kept recoiling and I remember telling him that I'm very uncomfortable and that he should go back to his seat. In response to my request, he said, "Not before I get something," and he tried to kiss me. I pulled back so hard that I hit my head against the window. To make a long story short, sorry for the novel, guys, a woman, a complete stranger a few seats behind me, comes along and goes, "Oh my god, I thought it was you I saw boarding the bus. We've got some catching up to do, girl." She said, "Excuse me, sir, do you mind?" really loudly to the creep, and the bastard got up and went back to his seat. She hugged me and asked if I was okay, and said she'd sit with me until we arrived at our stop. I was so glad because I really thought he would have followed me when we got off the bus. She told me she worked at a bar and is used to intervening when she senses something isn't quite right. I couldn't have thanked her enough. 8 years later, and that woman is now one of my best friends. That woman is truly an absolute hero. Creepy guy, enclosed space, late at night, hate that. Glad nothing else happened and that person was there to save OP. Well, maybe save isn't the right word, but help out at least. Story 4. I don't know about safe word drinks, but once in my early 20s, I went on a date with a guy who I didn't know well but seemed fairly normal. About 2 drinks in, he starts dropping some real creep vibes. Says that he loves how young I look. At one point, he literally said, "You look barely old enough to have your period." Yikes. I make eye contact with the bartender behind me and mouth, "Help." She came right over and asked if I had been in recently because there's a scarf in the lost and found that might belong to me. I walked with her to an employee room and explained the situation. She waited with me while the bouncer bounced him. Later, that same bouncer walked me to my car. Story 5. I went out on my own one night and was having a few drinks at a local pub. I just moved to the area, so I didn't really know anyone. A guy sat down next to me and was chatting. At first, it was just casual, but eventually he became really tipsy/handsy. Then the guy actually kissed me out of the blue, and I told him I was not okay with it. He said I was leading him on, which wasn't the case at all. He got angry and stormed off to the washroom. I was feeling really uncomfortable and unsafe. I didn't know my new neighborhood yet. The bartender saw that I was feeling off right away. He didn't even know me, but he could tell. He asked if I wanted to be shown out the back door, and if they could put me in a cab home so that I could go without the guy following me. They even paid, and apologized that I felt unsafe in their bar. I was totally blown away. I would totally go back there and feel completely taken care of. Story 6. Not exactly what you asked for, but dealing with a major creep. I was at a bar alone and it was late, and the guy wouldn't leave me alone. The bartender swooped in and said that he was my husband and I was there waiting for him to get off work. He grabbed all my stuff and brought it to the other side of the bar, and the other bartender got the guy out. They had me wait for a while after he left, then they got me an Uber home to be safe. 3 years later, the bartender who pretended to be my husband is my actual husband. It's funny how things like that work out. Maybe the bartender just had a feeling. He's like, you know, you look like my wife, and you know what? He wasn't wrong. Story 7. Working as a bartender and bouncer for the past couple years, I usually just try to watch for body language of people that are in the bar. If it looks like someone needs a quick escape, I'll approach and pretend I'm an old friend that hasn't seen them in a while. If they actually don't need help, I can excuse myself by saying they looked like a friend. Either that, or I'll try to position myself behind the questionable party and give a thumbs up and cocked eyebrow as a sort of, you good? Story 8. Semi-related, but I was out at the pub on campus for a show, and had been there previously in the day celebrating our last exam with some friends. Some guy who was sitting at a table next to us and trying to chat us up earlier was still there with his buddies and was drunker and braver. And of course he got me alone when my friend went to the bathroom. He wouldn't stop talking to me and getting in my face and yelling about himself. And when I excused myself to go to the bar, literally was like, okay, bye. He followed me to the bar and ordered the same thing as I did and offered to pay. And I said I was good, and he did not stop talking. And I must have looked mad as hell because the bartender walked over and went, "Hey, you were here earlier, right? Buddy, give us a second. I need to speak with her about her tab." The guy leaves and the bartender tells me I looked distressed and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was fine, but this guy was in my personal space and not leaving. He said if he doesn't stop that I should come back and order a whiskey lemon and security would be notified. And he would walk me back to my car if I needed it. We ended up moving tables and I think he got too drunk to stand up and left not too long after that. But I was so relieved to know that the bartender was watching out. I'm not one for confrontation and it just feels so much safer to be able to duck out with someone having my back. Story 9. My bar didn't have a safe word drink, but my favorite bartender swooped in more than once and looked after me, even at times when I hadn't asked him to yet. I remember one time in particular when I came in with my roommate. She and I were sitting at the bar with our drinks, while a couple guys were sitting on the next two stools. They bought us drinks, so we did the usual polite thing and said thanks, introduced ourselves, etc. Within 5 or 10 minutes of starting this conversation, they'd informed us that they were heading to an after party at their house and a bunch of people would be there. We should come with them. My roommate and I gave each other a look like, yeah, right, and said thank you but no. Well, they wouldn't take no for an answer. They just kept right on trying to somehow convince us to leave and get in a car with two strange men to go to a house we'd never been to, and then just trust that it was safe. After a while, my bartender came over to us. He didn't say anything to me or the guys, not a single word. Instead, he leaned on the bar across from us and started to grin. I smiled back and so did my roommate, and the three of us just kept looking at each other and smiling silently. The guy talking at us slowly got quieter and then stopped talking at all, and then he and his friend walked away. As soon as they left, the bartender straightened up and went back to work. I have a lot of respect for anyone intuitive enough to pick up signals something is wrong, and confident enough to resolve a potential conflict with so little effort. I do wonder what goes through these guys' minds when they're continue trying to convince someone. It's like, okay, they said no, but surely if you keep asking, they'll say yes, right? That does not make you look creepier at all. Just a weird lack of self-awareness. Story 10. I had to use it when on a date off Tinder. We met up and he had already got me a drink, just sat there, shot of something clear, and then said to me that I should do it. Then he would take me somewhere better for more fun. I wasn't comfortable, so I excused myself to the bathroom, and saw a poster that said, "Ask for Angela if you're uncomfortable." Went to the bar and asked for Angela, and immediately this guy was playing along, saying, "Oh yeah, she's working in the kitchen tonight." He got me a taxi and walked me out the back door and into the taxi to make sure I got there without any hassle. Never saw the guy again. Story 11. This is a relatively new thing, but us girls have been doing some form of it for a long time. Back when I was a bartender, I noticed a girl stumble into the pool table. She was crying and clearly very intoxicated. I went over to ask if she was okay, and some guy I hadn't seen her with all night jumps up and says, "I'm her boyfriend, I've got her." Yeah, no the frick you do not. We got her to calm down and give us her phone to call her roommate, so someone safe could take her home. It sucks that it's necessary, but I'll always love my boss from that bar because he threw that creep out physically. We saw her again. She didn't have a boyfriend or remember that night. Story 12. This is a close but not quite situation, but it may get attention due to the lack of legit responses. A guy I was with was super adamant about me keeping up with him slamming drinks. He would drag me across the bar and order for me, then egg me on to drink faster, etc. I did not want to be drunk with him. He ordered me a vodka soda, and I maintained that slightly pained look on my face, hoping to catch the bartender's attention. When he looked my way, I widened my eyes just a little and subtly shook my head no. I watched him as he poured my drink by faking the vodka pour and just filling me with what I presume was soda water. Not normally my drink of choice, so I wasn't sure what it was. Kinda looked like stale Sprite. And he garnished it with a lime and everything. Said, "Cheers" when he handed us our drinks. This continued for a while until Drunky McSmashy Pants wanted to leave. Bartender said to me, "Oh, you had asked about seeing Megan, right? Yeah, she's in the back. Go ahead while he closes out." I sort of hovered by the restrooms, which were tucked away, watched the bartender BS with the dude for a while, and he eventually left looking all annoyed. When the coast was clear, I came out, said my thank yous, and he said, "Anytime. Happens more than we care to admit." So I thought it was pretty cool that the bartenders were aware enough to pick up on the little signs and help assist her out. I guess during their conversation, he basically convinced the dude that I didn't seem into it, and he thought he saw me leave already. Drunk dude was drunk, so I guess he bought it without further intervention necessary. Story 13. The bar I go to regularly doesn't have a safe word drink, but we do have a drink called the Lucy Special. If you have men that you notice are trying to buy you a lot of drinks, are sober and make you feel uncomfortable, or if you don't trust who you are around and want to keep your wits about you, the Lucy Special is a glass of ice, soda water, and crushed limes. Story 14. Not me, but my friend. Here in Sydney, a few bars have signs on the back of bathroom stalls, which say that if you're on a first date or are feeling uncomfortable with the person you're with, go up to the bar or just mention Angela, and the staff will call you a cab or make up a situation to get you out of it. My friend was on a Tinder date, and the dude was being really creepy. So she went up to the bar and mentioned Angela, and they came up to her table a few minutes later saying her mum had called the restaurant because she couldn't get through to her phone, and that there was a family emergency and they booked her a cab to go home. Story 15. I've actually been used to escape by a random before. Was at a local bar with a bunch of friends, and out of nowhere, girl walks over, sits on my lap, and between a teeth-clenched smile, just says, "Pretend you know me," and laughed out loud and said, "Hey, you! Where'd you wander off to?" Thankfully, my friends picked up on it, because inside of 10 seconds, a few of my female friends were chatting with her and standing between her and the guy. She'd fled. I asked her afterwards what about me made her know I was a safe person to turn to, and she said, "Because you're here with a bunch of women. Total honesty? Thought you were gay." LOL. On one hand, OP is a safe guy and it shows. I have a feeling from OP's response that he may not actually be gay. Unlucky, buddy. You'll get him next time. Story 16. Not exactly the question, but where I live we once had an epidemic of pickup artists on every corner. There was this one guy who was incredibly persistent and wouldn't take no for an answer. When I told him I had a boyfriend, he wouldn't let me leave and said I had to give him one of my friend's numbers. Thank God a kind girl noticed what was happening and came up to us while saying, "Well, there you are. We've been looking for you. Come on, let's go. The show is about to start." She got me away from him and I was so thankful. To anyone out there, please don't ever do it. It's such repulsive and scary behavior. Anyone who calls themselves a pickup artist is a loser. And I'm not even saying that calling yourself a pickup artist makes you a loser. It's just that to want to do that, you have to have loser qualities already. I don't make the rules. Story 17. My university town had the highest incidence of intimate assault for 5 years in a row. The school and community took it really seriously and implemented procedures all over the place. I asked my friend, who is a bouncer at my favorite bar/club, what happens when a girl orders the drink. He said it changes week to week in the ladies' bathroom to confuse men when the word gets out. You can use any of the former ones and the bartenders will jump into action as well. Generally, they find a way for you to get away from that person, whether it be a phone call or they need to show you something. Once you're out of eyesight, they whisk you away to the opposite floor of the place. Bar is on the bottom, club is on the top, and keep the date occupied until you're gone. If he gets away from his company, they radio that the drink got spilled, and every bouncer abandons their post to try and keep him away from you. They escort you out the back door into a waiting cab. They pay the cabbie to take you home and make sure you're not followed. When you get home, they ask that you flick your front porch lights on and off and call the club to let them know you're safe. They also save the security cameras from that day, in case you have a need of it at a later date. I never used their service because my friends were the bouncers and usually intervened before I needed to say anything. My friends did though, and they said it was a huge relief to be in a bar that took women's safety so seriously, because in other bars in that town, you could pay a bartender $20 to spike a drink. I learned the hard way to never accept a glass from someone who had their open palm over the glass. Some people really suck. Story 18. Not a safe word per se, but my mom and a friend went to a bar and a guy mugged her friend outside. She entered with her purse messed up and holding a shoe, and their male friend called over to the owner. He called out something like, "Woman down!" and a bunch of men stood and went outside to search for this guy. Turns out a few years prior, a woman there got assaulted. After that, the owner established a code phrase with the regulars for if a woman gets attacked. The place looks like a dive bar at first glance, but the owner was a serious gentleman, and didn't even allow cursing in there. On one hand, great that he's keeping the women safe. That's excellent. On the other, no cursing in a drinking establishment? That's weird, right? This must be like hardcore Bible Belt. Story 19. Well, this doesn't really answer your question, but nobody else is answering either, so here we go. One time I was dancing at a gay club and this guy, I'm a gal, kept following me around the dance floor. He'd work his way up to me, start grinding, put his hands where they weren't wanted, try to get himself pressed up against me, etc. And when I moved to a different part of the dance floor, he'd show up a few minutes later doing the same thing again. Anyway, we go through this 3 or 4 times, and all of a sudden, these 2 great big dudes in fursuits, one skunk and one bunny, appear out of nowhere. They greeted me with these grand courtly bows and offered to dance. Although bemused, I took their paws, and they led me in this dorky-ass square dance that had these 200-pound masses of fur and sweat stomping circles around me, and deterring anyone else from getting too close. A few songs later, they bowed again and scampered off, and I never saw the grody guy again. I did wave to the furries several times that night. Nice fellas. Cool thing is, that wasn't even the first or last time that furries, leathermen, and fat guys in cupcake-themed lingerie have swooped in to help out when somebody's creeping on me. It's just the weirdest, though. But I guess I'm not surprised that the kinkiest guys are also the first guys to take action to stop harassment. They're pretty brave already.